Welcome to Watch News Weekly. A bit late in the game in the year, but good excuse. I was away for a little bit over New Year's. Came back, went right to Miami for a couple of shows, just got back. And hence the first Watch News Weekly of the year. And the first bit of news comes with a bit of sadness. And we're all aware of the wildfires that have taken place in the Los Angeles area. It is absolutely terrible what has happened to the people of Los Angeles. My heart goes out to every single one of you, those that have lost their homes, their cars, their belongings, and even worse, their loved ones. I hope it all ends fairly soon. We're not going to get into that. We're here to talk about watch news. LVMH Watch Week 2025. It was canceled due to wildfires. It was supposed to take place January 21st through the 24th. Supposed to have Tag Heuer, Zenith, Bulgari, Hublot, Louis Vuitton, and Daniel Ross displaying at the show. They do plan to reveal their latest timepieces through a smaller presentations, basically worldwide in February, where they're just going to travel. I guess it'll be like a travel show where they're going to show the new releases. It was going to be the first West Coast hosted version of the event. This was the first time they were going to do it out there. And again, unfortunately, it got canceled, but obviously for good reason. Once again, my heart goes out to all of you guys in LA and those that were affected by the fires in LA. Vacheron, finally. We knew it was coming, okay? We knew that once they released, or re-released, I should say, the 222 in yellow gold, that a stainless steel version was going to come. And I like the pause that they took, and I like the fact that they didn't do it right away. The yellow gold Vacheron Constantin caused, a splash, if you will. Everybody loved the watch. Everybody wanted the watch. Already ran out and bought a bunch of other watches in order to get that one. Vacheron, it's the longest continuous operating watch brand in the world. They're the makers of the first and the second most complicated watch ever made, right? This brand is part of the Holy Trinity. Vacheron is it. Unfortunately, it doesn't get a whole lot of love. Ever since it became part of a group, something is just not clicking. You see majority of their pieces out there for under list. Still sticking with the 37mm case and blue dial. Priced at $32,000, but I think we both know that that's not a price we're going to see on a secondary. That is not a price that is going to be out there. I think that one is going to stick around at way over list for quite some time. If I had to put a guess on what the first ones will go for, I would say at least double, if not more. Its annual production will certainly be inherently limited. And it's only available, obviously, at the Vacheron boutiques. But again, they're going to continue making them like they make the yellow gold. This is Vacheron doing what Audemars Piguet did when they came out with the first sports watch in 1972, the Royal Oak. Same thing Gerard Perregaux did in 1975-76 for their Laureato. And, of course, followed by the Nautilus in 1976. Nothing new. Amazing watch. If anything, Vacheron came late to the game post the Royal Oak in 1972 because they want to see how well the market would take. And guess what? It was a success in 1977, and I guarantee you it will be a success in 2025. Omega, Meteorite, Speedmaster. I looked at the picture briefly right before I actually sat down to do this thing, and I literally stared into the abyss when I was looking at that watch. What better way to have Speedmaster, Moonphase, with a Meteorite dial? How fitting is that? The quintessential moon watch, the quintessential space watch, adding Meteorite to that collection was an absolute, I would say, boss move by Omega, and pricing them relatively inexpensive in comparison to some other Meteorite models from other brands like Rolex, right? The majority of Meteorite stuff that you're going to find is going to be inside a precious metal. They put it inside a stainless steel 43mm watch. They have the black PVD coating option or the gray coated option, right? It's the galvanic gray coated, or whatever they call it, galvanic gray coat, something like that, right? And of course, each dial is technically going to be unique because every piece of Meteorite is going to be unique with its ribbon-like patterns, if you will, right? So no two watches are exactly going to be alike. You know, people always ask me about Meteorite. What's the one thing you can tell me about Meteorite? I'll say, well, you can technically say you have a piece unique because no one dial is going to be the same. The Moonphase at 6 o'clock features the two cabochon moons made from real lunar meteorites, while the starry background accurately mirrors the sky above Bienne, Switzerland on the night of Apollo's 11th moon's landing. It's little quirky, gimmicky things. I don't know about you guys, I love them. I'm a sucker for those, and most Omega collectors will probably feel the same as I do. Absolute knockout of a pair of watches. MSRP $17,100. Black version, you're going to get a black ceramic bezel where the gray dial is paired with a blue ceramic bezel. Do I want one? Yes. Will I wait till I find a few of them discounted on the secondary market? Probably yes. May take a little bit of time? Also probably yes. But tremendous job, Omega. Hats off to you. Love both. MB&F. releases two 20th anniversary Longhorn models. Now, what are these Longhorn models you're talking about? Well, I'll get into that in a second, but 2025 marks the 20th anniversary of MB&F, the independent watch brand founded by Max Bucer, also known as Roman's favorite independent watchmaker out there. What I admire about the man is the fact that he gives credit where credit is due. Oftentimes, you don't see, who is the watchmaker that made the latest Audemars Piguet tourbillon or the latest perpetual calendar, et cetera, or Patek, et cetera. It's just not something that is done in the industry. The concentration is on the brand name, where Max puts the concentration on the watchmaker or the designer or the dial designer behind a particular watch that he makes, hence Max Bucer and Friends. What he did is two complications: the Legacy Machine Perpetual and the Sequential Flyback. And they're called Legacy Machine Perpetual Longhorn and Sequential Flyback Longhorn. McDonough Creation, that chronograph, or the Perpetual, they're both amazing. These guys are measuring 44 millimeters in diameter, so nothing changed there from the previous version. And the Longhorn lugs concept, so what they did is they basically added two positions for the spring bars that hold the strap, right? One is like at the tip of the lugs, closer to, I guess, the bottom, and then one closer to the case, right? And it basically allows the wearer to choose where they place their straps. I don't know the benefit to that. I'm the kind of person that doesn't like a gap between their case and their watch, but I've seen some guys wear watches where they create sort of that gap between the strap and the watch. Again, to each his own. And MSRP for both is going to be $184,000. Never said Max Bucer and Friends were cheap, but rightfully so. This is one of the most amazing perpetual calendars, and this is probably the most innovative top chronograph on the market today, the sequential chronograph. That watch took the world by storm. It came out about almost 2 years ago now. Looking at the pictures, I mean, what else is there to say? The aesthetics of an MB&F is second to none. They're unique in every way. Housed in a traditional case, unlike its horological machine, but still giving you the feel of the future. Remember, Max's whole thing was, if I were to design the watch, a futuristic watch back in the 1800s based on a pocket watch. Let that sink in. Look at these watches. Definitely would not use those straps though. I think a blue strap would have been better here, or black. Now, Rolex just pulled an AD status from a 50-plus-year-old authorized dealer, Damiani, over in Vaughan, Ontario, in Canada. The way the world found out is they send letters to their customers. They stated Rolex is changing their marketing strategies and looking for boutique-only businesses. One of Canada's oldest official Rolex retailers. You know, they just did a renovation, a Rolex renovation, for which they probably paid millions, that Rolex made them do back in 2018, just a short 7 years ago, or a little less. And the question is this the beginning of an end for authorized dealers or authorized Rolex dealers? Well, I think the answer is that it's no secret that that's where Rolex is going, and a lot of the brands are going. It all started by our Francois over at Audemars Piguet when he did it quite some time ago, and it paid off in a big way. They're cutting out the middleman. Look, if you go back years, you go back to when Damiani started 50-some years ago, Rolex would have the lower hand, right? It was the ADs that had the upper hand. There was a time in this world where there was an AD that actually controlled Rolex rather than Rolex controlled them because of the amount of doors and the amount of stuff that they sold for them. Is it the beginning of the end for ADs? I would say probably is, due to the popularity of Rolex and what they've been doing over the last few years. But the reason for them losing their dealership still stands in question. Comment below, let me know what you think. Grand Seiko's first 2025 release is a Ginza limited edition spring drive, the SBGA 503. Okay, it's a new spring drive model. It's limited to 500 pieces. It's supposedly inspired by the street-lit snow in Ginza, the renowned shopping district in Tokyo where Seiko was founded. And obviously the watch will only be sold at the 6 Ginza area stores, and lots of don't eat yellow snow jokes online, and rightfully so. If you look at this watch, it does look like yellow snow, which of course people took it online, and the internet always wins, and they went with the don't eat yellow snow joke. But aside from the color of the dial, are the newly emphasized minute markers. They're a little bit bolder, they're longer than usual for Grand Seiko, plus they're alternating lengths adds some sportiness to the look, for the lack of a better word. MSRP 6,300. Do I like the watch? Absolutely. Do I think this dial is very nice? All jokes aside, absolutely. Do I like the little touches and the little changes that they made on the watch? Just the same. But I expect to see one or two of these cross into the United States in a very short amount of time. Panerai going back to its vintage roots with the Luminor Tre Giorni. I'm not an Italian. 3 days. Okay, it's the PAM 1628. Now, minimalistic, classic aesthetic. from the good old days, right? You look at the watch, you look at the markers, you look at everything about it, it makes you feel that this is a Panerai from the 50s. I like that about Panerai. A lot of Panerai collectors like that about Panerai. 47mm stainless steel case. Just like other Panerai watch models, the Tre Giorni or the 3-day 1628 has the huge crown at 3 o'clock. It's fitted with a black dial. All right, and it's a great contrast between the case and the dial. MSRP $11,000 is expected from Panerai. Can't really see from the picture what they mean about the case is being finished a certain way where it gives it an older feeling. I would have to see this watch in person to really get the grasp of this new finish that they're talking about, because I don't think this particular picture relates. If any of you guys have seen this watch in person, comment below and let me know. Glad to be back in a new year. Happy New Year to every single one of you guys. Hope your year is successful, productive. Be happy, be healthy, and everything else you can buy on luxurybazaar.com. I'll see you next week.